I think. I'm tired, I need the strength and power to guide me through my darkest hour. Lord, just open my eyes that I may see. Lead me, Lord, won't you lead me? Lead me, guide me along. I think we still have some time. I don't see any hands running around. Good. As long as we don't see, should I sing on? Yeah? You like this song? If I got any girls with this one. Oh, desert, I'm alive in your eyes. Oh Lord, pride, oh love of my Father. He blamed me for lost, I was wild. You know what I've been to prison. There's some things that I have never done. It's been a hill after another. I climbed all one by one. Oh, this time, Lord, you gave me a mountain. A mountain that I will never climb. It is and strive. Oh Lord, I don't work for nothing. Tired of being my own wife. She took my heart with your sunshine. She took my pride and my joy. Oh, took my reason for living. Thanks for being here. So I remember you long after this, that was summer is gone. I'll be lonely, oh so lonely, the only two. There's voices soft as a warm summer breeze. Your sweet laughter, the morning after, ever after. I remember you to your arms someday. I'll return to stay till then. I will remember too every bright star reminiscence of one. Love me always, promise always. Ooh, I remember you. I remember you. It goes for you too, Friar. I'm on your side. Oh, times get rough, and friends just can't be found. Dank. Many thanks. Merci. Dankjewel. Dankeschön. What's the Spanish word to that? Gracias. Mr. Harry Knudsen, thank you for putting on this show. And hopefully I'll see you next year again. I'll see you at Christmas show.
Maarten Jansen from Holland.
Thank you.
While Maarten is finding the song, I just want to tell you all that Maarten has out a new CD, duet CD, and he's selling it for 100 kroners. 100 kroner.
We'll go to my charity.
It's going to Gas Home. So
It's going to get him home. We are sick of him. Okay. I got a challenge on this little note, and I know I have this song. Where the hell is my roadie when I need him? I should not do this, but it should be there. Talk a little more, Henrik. Is that all? Oh, now I know what it is. It's under the T. The T. There's a T in front of this. Yeah, it's called the. And I was looking at I. That's why, you know, I never went to school. And it shows.
You did. You went seven years in school?
Yes, after 7th grade they kicked me out.
No, it was 7 years in the same grade.
Yeah. I think you like it. To dream the impossible dream, to find the unfindable fool, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave cannot go, or ride the unridable road, to be a little more than you are, to try when your arms are too heavy. Do you have lighters? To reach an unreachable star. No question, no pause, to be willing to march in the hell of the heavenly God.
And the CD that Sam's talking about is released by Ernst Jørgensen and FTD and is on good terms. They're not sued, they gave him a hot dog and he's happy.
I had to sue Henrik, but not
Yeah, twice. Anyway, there's a story that you once told me. We were driving from here to Sweden together, we were on a boat, and you told me this story about Elvis. Was he playing in Los Angeles or Miami or something like that, and there was a section where he was throwing scarves, and the scarves was literally just falling, and he was surprised that nobody picked them up.
I think it was Jacksonville.
Sorry.
It was in Florida, and many times we played in Dick is right. He really abhorred outdoor arenas, like Pontiac Silverdome and places like that. He didn't like to be outdoors. But we were playing an indoor arena, and it was sort of a stage in the round where the seats were all around us, and of course there were seats in the back. And Elvis, when he had that, he would always, we had cords, we didn't have condenser mics like this, we had corded mics. So people had to help him, make sure the cord was not tangled or straight, which brings me up to another story. But that particular night, Elvis was working the stage, and he would throw a scarf out, and people would just mob, get the scarf and grab it. And he worked his way to the back of the stage, and the people were sitting there, and they were just clapping and singing, and they were like really into the show. And Elvis threw a scarf, and nobody moved. They were just still clapping and singing. The scarf just did this. And he had the most perplexed look on his face. He looked at Charlie Hodge, and we didn't know either. And so he picked up another one, he threw it, and the people are laughing, and they're singing, and the scarf just flutters to the ground. Well, he quickly left that part of the stage, That wasn't working there, so he came around and finished the show. We all get in the limo after the show. And when we would do that, there was a little bucket of ice and a cold towel. Elvis would lean his head back, because he exerted so much energy in the show. And normally he didn't say a word right away. But that night, before he even put the towel on, he looked at Joe and said, "What the hell was going on? Did you see what was going on back there?" And Joe was chewing his gum, and he said, "Oh yeah, boss." He said, they didn't sell all the tickets, so the colonel donated that to the local blind club. And Elvis just looked at him and says, "Don't you think that's something you should have told me before the show?"
Because that led to another story.
Well, I have little feet, as you can tell here. My nickname with Elvis was Paddlefoot. And like Linda was talking about, his nickname was Crazy. And everybody had a nickname. Joe Esposito's name was Jaws, I think it was, or the Brain. Everybody had nicknames. And I didn't have a nickname at that time. But we were playing in Las Vegas, and I was standing on the side of the stage behind a curtain. And Elvis, and this is at the beginning, when Ronnie Tutt's drumming and Elvis is coming out. And "That's all, I think that's all right, Mama." Whatever he was singing, when he came out, he got to the end of that chord, and it became taut, and it just went beep, and flew across the stage and hit it like that. And Joe Gershio was our orchestra conductor. He dropped his baton. He later told me he thought he'd been shot. He dropped the baton, the band quit playing, everybody stopped, Elvis stopped and turned around. I thought, what's going on? And Elvis reaches over and picks up the microphone, and it's in front of 1,800 people in the showroom. Picks that microphone up and takes it and does this. Hand over hand till he gets to the curtain, and the spotlight's following him, and he opens the curtain like that. And there I am, standing on the cord. So Elvis was could be a little indecorous sometimes in his language. And I'm saying that politely, right? So he looked at me and he looked at that and he picked it up, and I picked my foot up off the cord and he took the microphone and hit me with it and said, "You big-footed son of a bitch." You paddle-footed son of a bitch. And so that became my name. And I got called Paddlefoot quite a bit by a lot of the guys after that. So I'm a little bit embarrassed by that.
we will have a few questions from the audience, but before we have that, Luis, what do you think about this? 41 years after, and it's still going on. Would you ever have thought that?
No, it's so surprising. Every time we go to an event like this, how many of you are here and you know so much more about him and the music than a lot of people do in the States, all right? We just appreciate your love for him. But I didn't think it would still be going on. I think it will forever, right?
You
As long as
sure?
we're around.
I think Louise said it well. You know, the truth is, you know, all of us, and I won't name names, but the people, and there, by the way, fewer and fewer of us remaining that actually knew Elvis and worked with him. And you watch the people pass away as the years go by and the numbers dwindle, and it gives you a real sense of mortality and humility. And you realize how times change and things move on and people forget. But they don't seem to forget about Elvis. And you know, every 5 years or so when they have these events, you say, okay, this is the last one, this will be the last one. And then a few years have passed and there's another. And I have been one of those naysayers that thought, well, 10, 15 years is all over. But here we are 41 years after he passed away. And may I remind you, he was 42 when he passed away. So we sort of have two equal halves here. And I don't mean to be offensive when I say this, but I always say Elvis had two careers. One when he was alive and spending a lot of money, and one when he's passed away, and he's making more money now than ever because he's not here to spend any. And because you know how generous he was. But it is remarkable to think that all these years later, 4 decades, that 600,000-700,000 people a year go through Graceland and Memphis, that people, what do you have, how many people a year here?
We have last year we had 150,000.
150,000 through this place right here, Memphis Mansion. Isn't that amazing? Incredible. So, you know, I don't want to be remiss and forget to do this, so thank you to the fans for what you do. I've said this to the people who run Graceland, that you are the tail that wags the dog, if you know what I mean. That's what we say in Memphis, but you're the reason Graceland exists. You're the reason that Elvis still is relevant. It's through these people like you and you who keep his memory alive in the most positive way. And what is that? Music. I think if Elvis were alive today, truly, he'd be so impressed with these events that take place. And you know, I think I can speak for all the guys, for James Burton and Ronnie Tutt and Glenn D, and even for those that are not here, and Linda, and I know the rest of us, Dick. You know, we're grateful to have the opportunity to come and to talk to you and portray the other side of Elvis maybe that you never knew, because you only saw him on stage or on film, but to talk about the human, the being that he was, the good person that Elvis was. And he had a lot of good characteristics. And to thank you for keeping his memory alive through music. He would be most grateful for that.
Okay. Does anyone have a question for the Thompsons? Yes, sir? I say, yeah. How was the reaction when you started working for Elvis and your friends and your maybe old colleagues when you told them, hey, now I'm working for the King?
Well, the day that I went in to resign from the sheriff's department, and we had this chief called Big Face. His name was Gerald Proctor, but he had a really big head, so we called him Big Face, but not to his face. So he was the boss. And so I went in, and the sheriff was a fellow named Roy Nixon, Skip Nixon, who was a friend of Elvis's. And they knew that I had met Elvis and that type of thing, so it kind of got around the department. And I went in and I said, I'm going to have to resign because I'm going to go to work full-time for Elvis. And the ultimate thing was, no, I didn't have to resign. I just took leave of absence and kept my credentials. And I was sitting there and I was so worried. And I said, Chief, I just don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And he looked at me and he said, does he need two? So I knew I was doing the right thing. But I guess probably like most of us, if some good fortune comes to you, there are always naysayers that perhaps wish it were them and, you know, try to denigrate that. But there weren't very many. I think most of them were, I don't know if they were in awe or anything like that, but they certainly probably wished it was them. And over the time that I was with Elvis, certainly after I went to work full-time, I did involve a lot of my companions with the Sheriff's Department, my squad car partners and field commanders and people that I knew managed to meet Elvis and come up. And I kept a really good relationship so that when Elvis passed away, the first security that we had was the Sheriff's Department. And I had quite a few members that I knew that immediately came out and called and responded and did what they could. So it was a good reaction.
Do we have another one?